Good morning, everyone. It is good afternoon, everyone. We just talked about this. It is now 1:02, and I'd like to call the May 14th meeting of the UWP Committee to order. Let's start with a few reminders. If you're in the room and you haven't already, please be sure to complete the sign-in sheet out in the hallway. Members of the audience who want to make a public comment later on the agenda should fill out a public comment card and hand that card to the CMAP staff in the room. This meeting is being broadcast on Zoom and is being recorded. For those online to hear what is being said in the room, please make sure that we all use our microphones. It also remains a best practice to identify ourselves when making a motion or a second. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you are called upon to speak. When appropriate in the agenda, I will request comments from those online and recognize you when it is your turn to speak. With that, let's start today with self-introductions of the members here at the table. I am Megan Swanson, Chair of the committee representing IDOT. To my right,
Amy Lee of CMAP.
Heidi Lichtenberger, representing Council of Mayors.
Scott Hennings, representing the counties.
John Paul Depla, FHWA.
Chris Skokesbakken with Pace.
Heather Mullins, Regional Transportation Authority.
David Kralik, Metro.
Christina Bader, CTA.
Buck Doyle, CDOT.
thank you, everyone. We have the necessary quorum of voting members present. Our first item on the agenda is agenda changes and announcements. The staff has no agenda changes or announcements today, but does any member of the committee wish to propose any additional agenda changes or make any announcements? Hearing none, let's move on to the approval of minutes. We have before us the draft minutes of the August 14th, 2024 meeting. So long ago. Are there any?
It's December.
I was like,
December.
really? It's been that long. Okay, the December.
11,
Okay,
December
thank
11th.
you. The December 11th, 2024 meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So move CMAP.
Is there a second?
Second, counties.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed signify by saying no. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. Moving on to new business. We are going to open our packets. In our packets, the staff has provided an update on the status of FY25 invoices. Kama is here if anyone has any questions. I would just like to take a moment to encourage everyone to get their invoices in as quickly as possible. I think it's really important that we are getting the money out as quickly as we can so that we can show that we're spending the money. We're going to move on to 4.2, the 2026 Unified Work Program. This is also an informational item. As noted in the agenda, the staff has transmitted the FY26 UWP document that was approved by the MPO Policy Committee back in January to IDOT. IDOT will be forwarding this to the US DOT for approval prior to executing our FY26 funding agreements. Does anyone have any questions about the UWP? Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Oh.
sorry, question.
Yes.
We typically got a copy of the appendix to do project update revisions, and I don't see that come through this year.
We cheated and used your websites and public information to update this year.
Okay. Would there be an opportunity to make any changes if there are more substantial changes that are not
Sure.
publicly available? Okay.
You can send this to me and I can update the
Okay.
appendix.
Super. Is there anything else? Okay. We are going to move on to FY 2026 contracts. And we have Deepa from the finance team who is going to update us on the timeline for the FY 2026 subaward contracts.
Hi, I'm Deepa Raghunathan. I'm the Principal of Financial Planning and Analysis here at CMAP. So we are planning on having draft subaward contracts ready by the end of this month to share. And once we have the official approval from IDOT, we'll be able to have those finalized as well. So you can keep an eye out for them. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Deepa?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So moving along in that process, once the contracts are in place and work is moving along, invoices follow. CAMA has a few updates on changes to that process that are anticipated for the coming fiscal year.
I feel like I don't have to lean down. Good afternoon again, everyone. Just wanted to note that as new staff come on board in our finance department, including Deepa and I think Vas, who we met at our last meeting, they've been working on rollout of D365 as a ERP system for CMAP accounting and timekeeping. That's been on a slower path than was anticipated a year ago. I think we were talking a year ago about being able to submit things online through that portal. We are using the system now internally for invoicing and sign-offs for payment. What happens is when your invoices come in, accounting staff upload those to D365. I receive notice, do the review for completeness and legitimate charges, and then approve that, and it goes back to accounting for payment. This same process is going to continue for FY26. So you'll continue emailing your invoice packets to accounting, and those will then get forwarded to me or other staff that get assigned to review for review and approval for payment. So, every effort is going to be made over the next year to not disrupt any internal processes for all of you, but we do need to make some changes to what is submitted to CMAP to kind of improve some of the accountability and facilitate some more efficient review. So I think we were kind of waiting for FY25, hoping that ERP system was going to come online, and didn't make any changes to the forms. Since that's not going to be online for a while, we are going to do some updating and get some templates in order just to make things more efficient and more transparent. For FY26, all of the charges on your invoices, whether those are personnel or expenses, are going to need to be assigned to the activities and tasks that are in the budget. So breaking out what was related to the TIP, what was related to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So just to align with your budget, because that's how the UWP is presented. It's presented as these activities that we do. They have a level of effort and a budget associated with them. So we need to report out on those activities. Also, to facilitate just better quarterly reporting, I think we're going to try and wrap that into the invoice packets, where you just give us a little blurb with each invoice about what work was done in that invoice period. That way we can do all of the progress reporting here internally. And that gives us a way to align the work to the hours that you're charging. And then just to improve efficiency, we want to revise the cover sheet and some of the key attachments just to make it easier for everybody to follow what's going on. So again, don't want to disrupt your internal procedures. Everybody does timekeeping a little bit differently. I think just rolling it into a couple cover sheets will be a big help for us. So watch for that coming over the next couple of months. We will have that in place for July 1. So any questions or suggestions or thoughts on any of that?
Anybody have any questions? Okay, thanks, Kama. Turning it over again to Kama. We are going to talk about the FY27 work program. Staff provided a copy in our packets, the tentative schedule for that development, which will include the core budget and a call for FY 27 through 31 competitive projects. Are there any questions about that or anything staff wants to highlight about that schedule?
I think nothing to highlight. There is a graphical representation of the table that's in the packet on the screen just to see how that flows over the next, 7, 8 months. Talking about potential methodology changes today, anticipating then this committee approving those changes at your meeting in July. In August, we would issue the call for competitive projects. In September, the call for core budgets. And then go through the programming and public comment process, looking towards approval by this committee in December to go to the MPO Policy Committee in January for the FY 27 UWP, which will include the 27 through 31 competitive program.
Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask about that issue? Okay. So as Kim mentioned in our prior item, this year will be our second call for competitive projects under our multi-year programming methodology. As required in that methodology, this committee is tasked with reviewing the prior year cycle and updating that methodology as needed. Staff would like to discuss a few potential updates with us. And even though we will not take any action today, we will take action in July. Kama is going to talk to us about this item.
All right, thank you again, Megan. So I think given changes that we all know are occurring throughout our federal programs to align with the current administration's priorities, staff did take a look at the competitive methodology, mostly to ensure that nothing within it could be construed as non-compliant with laws and guidance that has been issued. In particular, we want to be thoughtful about our competitive project selection. So we did take a look at the scoring matrix. If Richard could go to the next slide. Oh, and that's terribly tiny, I'm sorry. We looked at 3 things in the scoring, which is the first one, which is advances CMAP strategic direction. The second one, addressing federal planning factors. And then the third one, which is influencing or implementing statewide planning efforts. The rest are related more to administrative scoring. So the federal planning factors that we use are those that are specified in Title 23. So those align with federal law and don't need any updates. But when we looked at CMAP strategic direction, there are some priorities listed in there that maybe don't align so well with current federal priorities, particularly mention of climate change and diversity. So while our scoring is about supporting that strategic direction in general and not about scoring those individual elements, there's still some concern about some lack of alignment with federal priorities. So also thinking about the fact that our 2026 Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, that development is underway, and we've completed our emerging priorities report for that update. That report's going to guide our work in completing and implementing that new plan. So these priorities, while largely similar to our strategic direction, are a little bit more aligned with current federal priorities. So what staff is thinking is that we should, in our methodology, replace the strategic direction with the emerging priorities, not change anything about the scoring, still have it be related to the project proposals support the emerging priorities. The next piece of scoring that we looked at is statewide planning efforts. Since the federal government is no longer supporting climate change and EV planning, staff is suggesting just that we remove, thank you, just that we remove the carbon reduction and EV related state plans from the plans that you would receive points for supporting. So keeping all of the other statewide planning efforts in the list. Understanding that as a region, we do support those other plans, but would not use federal funding to do that work. So no changes are proposed to the maximum points available. Our scoring matrix would simply be revised similar to the existing one on the next slide. As I mentioned, with that strategic direction, which is the first one to be replaced with the emerging priorities. Are there any questions or concerns about that proposal? Again, not taking action today. I wanted to have everybody have some time to mull it around, but if there's any initial reactions to that, we'd appreciate discussing them today.
Does anybody have any feedback that they'd like to share? Any questions?
So does the total score stay the same as what it was previously?
Yeah, total score would stay the same. So, and again, on that first one, instead of saying you receive however many points it was for strong support of the strategic direction, it would be the same amount of points for strong support of the emerging priorities. And then the supporting of statewide plans was up to a maximum of 6, so that maximum would stay in place.
Anyone else? Okay, if you think of anything, please reach out to Kama and she'll be happy to talk to you about it.
All right, just one more point while we're here. I know we asked this at the last meeting, but I'm going to ask one more time. Are there any other elements of the methodology that we want to revisit before staff finalizes that for action at our next meeting? All right, seeing none, we'll make these changes, update dates and things like that, but otherwise expect largely the same methodology.
Super, thank you, Kama.
I'll just say thank you, Kama. This is really important for us, of course, to just make sure that when you all apply for funding, that we make sure you have continuity of funding. I think, like as Kama said, we recognize that there's still values and plans that our state wants to advance, but we're trying to be thoughtful about making sure that federal funding is going to things that are going to be federally eligible for that funding.
Great, thanks, Amy, too. So now is everyone's favorite part of the meeting where you can talk about your projects. If you have any updates on your UWP projects, does anybody have anything that they'd like to share this month? Okay. I hope that we will have some things to share at the next meeting. And now moving on to something really exciting, Phoebe Downey is going to give us an update on the I-290 Blue Line Corridor Development Office. It's a project that was an FY25 and 26 competitive project.
Hi, guys. Yes. Sorry for those of you who sat through our board meeting this morning. This is a Cliff Notes version of pretty much the same presentation. But we wanted to talk to you today because you guys awarded CTA, a competitive grant under UWP last year. And that money and effort is going towards the development of the Corridor Development Office for the 290 Blue Line Corridor. Next slide. So just as a reminder, kind of when we're talking about this corridor in this program context, we're talking about 13.5 miles from Mannerheim all the way into the Loop. It directly touches 7 suburban municipalities and 5 Chicago community areas. Program currently includes 11 CTA stations and 46 bridges and interchanges that cross the corridor. Most of these bridges and interchanges are programmed by IDOT, but some include local projects and projects in both the city of Chicago and Cook as well. So there are 2 regionally significant, like existing regionally significant projects in this corridor. One was IDOT and one was CTA. Both kind of look to address the corridor's aging infrastructure and congestion. As the partners were communicating, kind of like the magnitude of the improvement required calls for a more strategic and coordinated investment to modernize the roadway and transit networks, as well as address community connections and accessibility. So CMAP brought together a series of project partners. Sorry, next slide. Yeah. CTA and IDOT being the lead as they have their regionally significant projects, but also pulled in other jurisdictional owners and other key stakeholders into the partnership. CMAP worked with the partners to develop a governance structure and to also start progressing this corridor development office. It's not a real, like, we all talk about the CDO. It's an acronym for Corridor Development Office. It's a way to kind of talk about like the governance structure and the consultant team. I've had a few questions. I know that's a little complicated because we're adding in a new acronym to a world full of acronyms, but that is what we mean when we talk about the CDO in this context. Next slide. So as a reminder to those of you who are probably very aware of this, and those of you who are new to this is kind of the existing Blue Line I-290 program that exists. So Blue Line, the CTA's focus at this point is kind of on reconstruction and replacement of the track, updates to accessibility and modernization to existing rail stations, and then some work at both the terminal and yard and some power system work. For I-290, the record of decision currently includes reconstruction of the full roadway, widening at certain places of the roadway, including additional lane, improvements to the drainage system, reconstruction and replacement of bridges as needed, improvements to the Prairie Trail path, and a new PACE bus on shoulder extension. Next slide. So kind of like what is the CDO doing? So in September last year, we had approval from our board and CTA and IDOT to bring on board a consultant team to lead the CDO efforts. They've been working with us over the last 6 months to start establishing a few different work streams. So one of those work streams is establishing a corridor vision and unified messaging around the project and program. We kind of see this as a way to bring the two projects together right now. Like when we first approached this project, we had kind of like CTA and IDOT projects very much lived parallel to each other, but they didn't coexist. They weren't coordinated. There wasn't necessarily a united approach to how the corridor work was going to get done. And so this was the starting point of our partners to kind of develop an agreed upon framework of what we want to see in the corridor in the future and how we can kind of bring the two programs closer together and supporting one another, as well as bringing in other components of project work from local communities and other stakeholders. We're also working to coordinate and support the existing work that is going on. I mean, both IDOT and CTA have already put in a lot of money into this corridor and improvements. They've programmed close to, I think this is actually on a follow-up slide, but 1.65 billion to date. And so that work obviously needs coordination and sequencing, and we want to make sure we're strategically approaching it in a way that makes both financial and programmatic sense. Finding new tools to help support them do that and just providing them the space and the time to work together. And then we obviously need to pay for this work. So we are working with them and with our other partners to identify potential funding and financing strategies and ways of delivery to help us effectively and kind of sustainably bring this program of projects to the region. And finally, and probably most importantly, is engaging stakeholders, understanding local community needs. Like none of the work spoken about up to this point could be done without like the consensus and support of the community and the region. Next slide. So to date, what we have done is we've had 2 workshops as well as lots of other conversations with the core project partners. So that's kind of that group on that slide that we were talking about. And we've developed a unified vision for kind of the mainline corridor. And when we talk about this, it's really the existing work of IDOT and CTA. And we know we'll continue to refine and improve on that vision as we start to talk to larger group of stakeholders and reach out to communities. We have collected and synthesized all the existing project work that we know that's going on in the corridors. A lot of you have been part of those discovery meetings, so thank you for giving us the time and or your colleagues giving us the time to sit with us and help us really understand your plans and your needs in this corridor. We have launched several different committee structures. We have a management committee, which a lot of you guys participate in. We have a working group where kind of more technical work and coordination can be discussed and progressed. And then we also have an advocacy committee that is working to help develop the communication and the branding work. And then we've on the kind of funding and financing side, we got to the point where we've really started to get our hands around the existing program hopefully defining in the next few months how much is really going to cost, and what commitments and opportunities we have already on the table or possible to explore going forward. In the next few months, kind of the biggest thing you guys will see is a soft launch on branding, a website, and kind of the start of the more in-depth communication and engagement with our local stakeholders and municipalities. That's already started, but it will be really ramping up as we kind of soft launch the brand and the website. Okay, next slide. So yeah, to date, we've have 1.65 billion has already been secured by the lead agencies. Like, what is that going to? That is making your train commute faster and more reliable. It's helping to upgrade the tracks. It's also improving accessibility at train stations throughout the corridor, most recently Racine Station. IDOT is already addressing flooding and stormwater improvement issues. They're working in the corridor and also with Maywood to help improve the drainage system throughout the corridor. And then we're also creating safer transportation access and connection. They will begin then their kind of major project plan and program to replace and reconstruct overhead bridges this year. And that will be going forward in the MYP for the next 5 to 10 years. Next slide. So yeah, as part of that effort, we also want to make sure that we're working with local communities to help leverage the opportunity and the money that IDOT is investing and CTA is investing in the corridor. We'll be, as we talk to partners, kind of making sure the overlaps and the gaps, and that's our role as CMAP, really, to kind of identify those pieces. If IDOT is going to be replacing a bridge and putting in a bike lane, kind of working with the community partners to see how we can ensure their bike plan is kind of at pace and able to utilize that investment. Some of it is going to be more strategic corridor-wide efforts. And then there's obviously going to be this ongoing conversation of how we can leverage this corridor in conversations around transportation funding for the region in general. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Phoebe? Okay, thank you, Phoebe. And wasn't it fun to hear about a project that was underway? So I want you all to think about next month or next time we meet that you're going to have some updates. And when you decide you're going to give an update, reach out to Kama and she's going to put you on the agenda. So moving on, to any members of the committee have any other business to bring before the committee? Seeing none, staff did not receive any written public comment prior to the meeting or during the meeting. We don't have any comment cards. Do we have any virtual attendees?
We do, but no hands raised.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody so much for being here today. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 9th here in this room. And having no other business, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Amy. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? We are now adjourned at 1:30. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your day.